Everybody like and subscribe, praise the bell icon. Story number 1.
It was a sweltering July night in 2014 when Jaden Collins pulled into the parking lot of a remote Kentucky Fried Chicken just off a nearly deserted stretch of I-40 in rural Arkansas. He had been driving cross-country for hours and needed something hot to eat and a chance to stretch his legs. The lot was mostly empty, save for a single rusting pickup truck parked sideways across 2 spaces, its windows fogged up despite the heat. Inside, the restaurant was quiet, eerily so. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting a pale greenish hue across the old linoleum floors. Behind the counter stood a man in a grease-stained uniform. He had a strangely stiff posture and didn't speak when Jaden approached, only stared, his eyes glassy and unfocused. Jaden hesitated, but hunger won out. "I'll take a 2-piece combo," he said, his voice sounding too loud in the oppressive silence. The man blinked slowly, nodded once, and turned to prepare the food without uttering a word. Jaden noticed there were no other customers, and the dining area looked as if it hadn't been cleaned in days. Crumbs scattered on the tables, a sticky sheen on every surface, and what looked like a dark, greasy handprint smeared across the wall near the bathroom door. While waiting, Jaden heard a strange dragging sound from the kitchen, something heavy scraping across tile. He leaned over the counter slightly, trying to see in, but the swinging door was shut. The dragging stopped abruptly. The cashier reappeared and slid the tray toward Jaden without meeting his eyes. The smell was off, familiar fried chicken scent, but undercut by something metallic and rotten, like blood left too long in the sun. He carried the tray to a table near the window and sat down, watching the parking lot for signs of life. The pickup truck was still there, but now it was idling, exhaust puffing out in slow, sickly bursts. Jaden unwrapped his food and noticed something peculiar. The chicken was abnormally pale, almost gray. The skin was rubbery and translucent, and as he peeled it back, he could swear he saw something move beneath it, just for a second. He dropped it instantly, bile rising in his throat. That's when the lights went out. A heavy thud echoed from the kitchen. Then another. Something was back there. He could hear wet breathing, labored and gurgling, like an animal choking on its own tongue. The cashier hadn't moved, still standing frozen behind the register. Jaden whispered, "Hey, you okay?" But the man didn't respond. Then slowly, his head jerked toward Jaden, too quickly to be natural. His mouth opened and a low clicking sound poured out. Not words, not a groan, but something, insect-like. Jaden bolted, stumbling over a chair and sprinting toward the door. But it was locked. He slammed his fists against it, screaming for help. Behind him, the swinging kitchen door creaked open. He didn't want to look, but he did. A figure emerged, bloated, wet, and wearing a butcher's apron. Its arms were too long, its fingers tipped with something that looked like bone-carving tools. Its face, what was left of it, was mostly jaw, unhinged and dripping with oily fluid. In one hand, it clutched a human femur, gnawed down to splinters. On its apron, the KFC logo twisted and stained in deep brownish red. Jaden screamed louder. Then the cashier spoke, his voice hollow and strained. Fresh meat always tastes better when it's still afraid. Everything went dark. 2 days later, a trucker called in a report about a KFC that looked abandoned, its windows boarded up and the doors chained. No one could explain it. There had been no permits, no business closure reports. The building wasn't even on the current KFC directory. Health inspectors came, but the entire interior was stripped. No furniture, no fryers, no trace of food. Just a dark smear of something long dried on the kitchen floor and a foul smell that lingered for weeks. Jaden's car was found in the lot, keys in the ignition, his phone on the dashboard. He was never seen again. Some locals say that if you drive by that stretch of I-40 on a humid summer night, you can still see the flicker of neon lights and smell fried chicken on the wind. But if you stop, you might hear clicking and something dragging just behind the door.
Story number 2.
Late one night, long after the last customer had left, the employees at a small-town KFC began to notice strange things. The store was located on the edge of a forgotten highway, surrounded by thick woods that seemed to swallow the sound of passing cars. The manager, a man named Greg, had heard rumors about the place, odd noises, strange shadows in the parking lot, and equipment that malfunctioned for no reason. He brushed it off as old superstition and took the night shift to keep things running smoothly. Around midnight, the fryer suddenly stopped working. The kitchen fell silent except for the soft hum of the freezers. Greg went to check the machine but found nothing visibly wrong. As he inspected it, the lights flickered violently, casting eerie shadows across the greasy walls. Then, from the walk-in freezer, came a faint scratching sound, like nails scraping against metal. Curious and a little unnerved, Greg grabbed a flashlight and cautiously opened the freezer door. The cold air hit him like a wall, but what caught his eye was a small, dark figure crouched in the corner. It looked like a child, pale and gaunt, with hollow eyes that reflected the flashlight's beam. Greg blinked, and the figure vanished. Shaking, he hurried back to the kitchen, only to find the fryer now working again, hot oil bubbling as if nothing had happened. The crew, who had been waiting outside on a break, told him they saw strange faces peering through the windows, but when they turned to look, no one was there. The next night, a new employee named Lisa stayed late cleaning the dining area. As she wiped down the counters, she noticed the familiar smell of fried chicken suddenly shift into something metallic and rotten. The lights dimmed again, and a cold breath brushed her neck. Turning sharply, she saw a figure standing behind the cashier desk, a man wearing a grease-stained KFC uniform, but with skin that looked raw and burned, eyes glowing faintly red. Lisa screamed, but when the other employees rushed in, the figure was gone. The CCTV footage, reviewed the next day, showed nothing unusual, no sign of the man or any disturbances. It was as if the horror existed only to torment those who stayed too long after closing. Weeks passed, and the story spread. Employees quit in fear. Customers reported tasting something off in their meals, a metallic tang, a hint of decay that no amount of seasoning could mask. Locals whispered about a worker who had died in a fire in the kitchen years ago, his spirit trapped in the fryer, forever craving vengeance. One night, the cameras caught something chilling. The silhouette of a man, half charred, appearing behind the counter, staring directly into the lens. Then, the screen flickered and went black. The KFC closed soon after, abandoned and left to rot. But travelers passing by swear they still smell the haunting scent of burnt chicken mixed with something far darker, something not meant to be fried, but forgotten.
Story number 3.
It was a quiet, late night at a small-town KFC, the kind of place where the hum of the fryers was the only real noise. Most of the staff had already gone home, leaving just one overnight worker, a young man named Jake. He was used to the solitude, the repetitive routine of frying chicken and wiping down counters, but that night felt different. The fluorescent lights flickered unevenly, casting long shadows that seemed to twitch just beyond his vision. Around midnight, the front door chimed unexpectedly. Jake looked up to see a man step inside, a gaunt figure with hollow eyes and an unnatural stillness in his movements. He wore a dirty trench coat, stained and worn, and held a battered paper bag. Without saying a word, the man walked straight to the counter, placing the bag down and staring at Jake with a chilling smile that didn't reach his eyes. Curiosity and unease mingled inside Jake as he approached the bag. The man whispered something unintelligible, then vanished into the dark parking lot before Jake could respond. Shaking off the growing dread, Jake opened the bag. Inside, nestled in greasy paper, was what looked like a piece of fried chicken, but it was different. The skin was mottled with strange dark patches, and a faint pulse seemed to emanate from it. Suddenly, the lights flickered violently. The fryer hissed like it was boiling over, but when Jake glanced inside, the oil was eerily still. The sound of slow, labored breathing echoed around the empty restaurant. Jake spun around, heart pounding, but the man was nowhere to be seen. Then, from the back kitchen, a low scratching noise began. It grew louder, closer, like nails dragging across metal. Jake's flashlight beam cut through the gloom, revealing the walk-in freezer door slightly ajar. With trembling hands, he pushed it open. Inside was a sight he would never forget. Dozens of raw chicken pieces, but twisted and grotesque, their flesh pulsing as if alive. Some had faces, twisted, contorted in silent screams. Others had limbs, tiny clawed hands and feet, writhing desperately as if trapped. Jake slammed the door shut, but the temperature plunged instantly, his breath fogging in the freezing air. The fryer oil bubbled over violently, and the overhead lights went out, plunging the restaurant into darkness. He fumbled for his phone, but the screen only showed static. Through the blackness, the faint sound of whispering grew louder, words he couldn't understand but felt deep in his bones. Shadows moved along the walls, forming shapes that looked like distorted chickens, half beast, half human, marching toward him. Panicked, Jake bolted for the exit, but the door slammed shut, locked tight. The whispering became chanting, a cacophony of voices begging, pleading, accusing. Then the freezer door creaked open again, and those twisted, living chicken forms began to emerge, eyes glowing a sinister red. The last thing Jake saw before everything went black was the man's pale face appearing in the window, smiling wider than any human should, mouth full of razor-sharp teeth. The next morning, the morning crew found the KFC eerily quiet. Jake was gone, vanished without a trace. The fryer was cold, the walk-in freezer empty. The paper bag from the night before lay torn on the floor, the fried chicken inside now reduced to ash. To this day, late-night workers whisper about the horrifying KFC horror, warning anyone who will listen to never stay alone after midnight and never open strange bags left behind by silent strangers. Because sometimes the chicken isn't just food. Sometimes it's something else entirely.
Story number 4.
Late one night in a small town, there was a KFC that everyone loved. It was the go-to place after long shifts, a spot where friends met to share laughs and fried chicken. But beneath the neon glow of the bucket signs, something dark had begun to fester. The story that spread among the townsfolk was whispered in hushed tones, the kind you only share when you're sure no one else is listening. It started with a new employee, Jake. He was eager, fresh out of high school, looking for a summer job to save up for college. On his first night alone working the late shift, the usual clatter of the kitchen felt off. The air was thick and cold despite the heat lamps that kept the chicken warm. The deep fryer hissed like a serpent, but Jake swore he heard faint whispers just beneath the sizzle. He chalked it up to nerves and pushed on. Around midnight, Jake was tasked with cleaning the walk-in freezer. It was cramped, walls lined with frozen buckets and bags of secret spices. As he opened the heavy door, a blast of icy air rushed out. But it wasn't just cold, there was a faint metallic scent, like rusted blood. As Jake reached for the back shelf, the lights flickered violently, and the freezer door slammed shut behind him. Panic surged, but the handle wouldn't budge. Then from the darkness, a slow, wet scraping sound began, like fingernails on metal. Jake screamed, pounding on the door, but no one was there to hear. The scraping got louder, closer, until a shadow slid across the frosted glass. The freezer's temperature dropped rapidly. His breath became visible in thick clouds. Just as he was about to lose consciousness, the door flung open and his manager stood there, pale and wide-eyed. The manager whispered, "You have to leave. Don't ever stay after midnight." Jake never went back to work. Rumors swirled that years ago, a cook had vanished inside that freezer, never to be found. Some said the kitchen staff would occasionally hear strange noises, crying, scratching, even muffled screams from the walk-in after hours. Others claimed to see fleeting glimpses of a pale figure lurking near the fryers, arms coated in grease and blood. One night, a group of teens dared each other to sneak in after closing. They hid in the shadows, waiting to see if the stories were true. At exactly 12:07 a.m., the temperature dropped sharply, their breath fogged the air, and the old fryer began to bubble wildly, even though it was unplugged. Suddenly, a terrible wailing filled the room, echoing off the tile walls. The teens bolted, one of them dropping their phone, which captured a faint, ghostly face peering out from inside the fryer. The footage later circulated online, but no one could explain how a ghostly apparition ended up in the fryer's reflection, or why the smell of burnt chicken was mixed with something far fouler, like decayed flesh. Years later, the KFC closed down, shuttered after a string of disappearances and mysterious illnesses among employees. Locals say if you walk past the old building on a dark night, you can still smell the deep-fried chicken and something else, something rotten beneath it. No one dares enter, but the lingering question remains. What really happened behind those greasy walls? What haunts the fryer, the freezer, and the secret spice blends? And if you hear the whispers in the sizzling oil, whatever you do, don't answer back.